I'll call to order the special meeting of the Finance Committee on 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, June the 14th. Our purpose today is to move something out of committee ready to be voted on Monday night at the regular meeting, the second meeting of the month. Let me get organized here. You got it? Lee? Well,
I don't see him.
It's Mr. Woods here.
His office called me about 7 minutes ago and said he was on the way.
Okay. Let me mention, and I'll credit Ms. Burke, this was her idea, and I thought it was a good one to invite Mr. Woods. He had a family emergency yesterday, could not attend, but he is on the way, and I was going to allow him to comment and for us to ask questions on the, I'd call it the Cleveland Avenue project, but I think it's bigger than that.
Sure, Cleveland Avenue Master Plan.
Master plan. So we'll let, if y'all don't mind, we'll just maybe interrupt when he comes in, and we'll, because I know Mr. Montgomery particularly had a question on relocation and things like that he can comment on. Mr. Garrity, yes. I see we have a proposed changes. This is basically what you're recommending, and then we also have I'm looking here at the agenda, and I apologize, I've just walked in, and meeting was, you've got the halls in here, which we're going to refer to again, and then which is basically what this extra handout is.
Correct.
Mr. Garrity, I think it may be, unless people have specific questions, just to let you walk through your changes, and then this may be a quick meeting, I don't know. We'll see. But it may not.
Thank you, Chairman Clark, Mayor Jones, members of the council. The other thing I would note is we have put more responses to questions that were asked yesterday or after the meeting yesterday at your place as well. The changes that staff is recommending based on what we've heard collectively from council members and the mayor, number one is, the first one is to change our minimum hourly rate from $10.40, which is what was recommended in the budget, to $11. In order to do that, Human Resources has calculated that there are several positions above that we need to make adjustments in to make sure that you've got some parity between different levels of supervision. The cost of that is $525,000. Secondly, in response to the questions from council members and from Chairman Clark, we met on Friday with the police department, and they had put together an aggressive police recruitment plan that Chief Roundtree mentioned yesterday at Public Safety. It is a critical problem trying to get enough people interested in law enforcement. So they put together a program for $310,000, and if you need the details, we can break it out. But it includes.
Lee, can I stop you?
Sure.
Mr. Woods is coming, if you don't mind, since you've only covered 2 items. Mr. Woods, thank you for coming in. If you could come forward to the podium. If I understand you were pulled away yesterday, and you had the right priority. Look after your loved ones first and us second. But we did have a lively debate. I will say the council is very supportive of your project, and I think the main question is just centered around getting a better understanding of the project. Also understanding that you haven't defined it to the nth degree yet either, and you don't have any money or whatever else. So I will give you a couple minutes just to comment whichever way you want to, and then we'll see if there's any specific questions from the council.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, Assistant City Manager Lee Garrity. My name is Larry C. Woods. I'm Chief Executive Officer of the Housing Authority, City of Winston-Salem, 500 West 4th Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We have been meeting with city staff off and on to discuss our choice neighborhood. First, our planning grant. About 2 years ago, we did apply for a planning grant. There were well over 60 applicants across the country. HUD made it quite clear there'll only be 9 award grants, and the maximum award would be $500,000. And we were one of 2 across the nation that received the maximum. we took a project-based approach, met with the community residents, formed community advisory groups that addressed health issues, employment issues, economic development, housing, and education and safety. And they were chaired by different city department heads, nonprofit groups, and with full resident participation. We had community charrettes where we met with the community. We sat down and heard their concerns. We talked about what type of housing would they want to see come back into this community, what kind of jobs would they want to see, what type of school and other social benefits would make the Cleveland Ave community a place where they want to stay and live, play, and work. We put all that together in a final report. We didn't send it out to all of our development partners, and they've actually commented on them. We got the city's input on that also. And I'm glad to say is that we submitted that final report into HUD last month, Kevin, last month. And 2 weeks ago, we got a letter back from HUD, an unqualified letter of their full support behind our project. And as a result, we have moved forward in preparing an implementation grant. We have a grant writer, which was part of our development team. We have identified some key concerns within the application. The application is broken down into what's called a people segment, a neighborhood segment, and a housing economic development segment. Unlike Hope 6, where the Housing Authority was responsible for all three segments, HUD has taken a different approach. They are looking for outside professional partners to take on different aspects of this community transformation plan. So we approached United Way under Ms. Sidney Gordonier and asked United Way to take on the people. The people approach will be involved in all aspects of case management, including job development, job training, counseling, case management, mental health counseling, etc. I've also just met with Dr. Rory Walker, the Dean of Winston-Salem State University. He has agreed to take on the educational component. And with that component, he'll be responsible for coordinating all types of educational services from cradle through career, everything from daycare, elementary, junior high, high school, vocational tech, etc. We have decided, and HUD's requirement is that we take on the housing component with development partners. And the last component is called neighborhoods, and that is the part that HUD is looking for the city to take on that role. Under that role, the city would agree, one, to be a co-applicant, and Mr. Cheshire was here to explain what that means, as well as provide some what's called critical community improvements, CCI. Those improvements would basically, when we met with Mr. Garrity, are improvements that is nothing that we're asking the city to do that they would normally do if they were improving a neighborhood. New streets improvements, street furniture, it could be benches, it could be lights, sidewalks, roads. If you're going to improve a park, infrastructure, water, sewer lines, that nature. In that particular section of the application, it requires a 15% city contribution of the grant amount, and we are going for a $30 million grant. So we're looking for a city contribution of $4.5 million. If we do not receive the award, the city has no obligation to continue with that portion of our application. If we do receive the awards, we are not under any illusion that the money will be turned over to the Housing Authority. We expect the city to contract out any type of community improvements that the city deems necessary to move this project forward, and those funds should be available over a 6-year period so it doesn't put a big drain on the city's budget. We do have a map that we can show you exactly where this area is located, and we have some critical definitions that we think will explain what case management means, what the co-applicant means, and any other definitions that you're concerned with.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Would you like to continue with the map and things of that sort?
Yeah, thank you. I'd be happy to.
And give your name and address for the record.
Sure, thank you. Kevin Cheshire. I'm Vice President and General Counsel for the Winston-Salem Housing Authority. And Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'll just distribute this map.
Yes, sir. Please do. And if you can give one to the secretary over here for the record.
Yeah, so the map shows the grant area, and to echo what Mr. Woods has said, we have been engaged in an extensive planning effort to try to figure out exactly what would be the most efficacious use of our resources to catalyze redevelopment in the grant area. So we've come up with a transformation plan that's identified goals with respect to education, childcare, workforce development, housing, infrastructure, and then we've identified a variety of different objectives and tasks, excuse me, that we feel need to be undertaken in order to accomplish those goals. HUD has said, hey, we've accepted your plan, but we're not yet prepared to give you any money in order to implement it. We said, that's no problem. We're going to push forward and we're going to get money however we can. And HUD had said, well, we've got $30 million here to catalyze this development, respond to this notice of funding availability, which is what we've done. That is due at the end of this month, the 28th of June. We've had a pretty quick turnaround time. The transformation plan was due April the 28th, so we're less than 2 months from completion of our transformation plan to submission of our request for the implementation dollars. We're moving forward with a lot of partners. Mr. Woods mentioned several of them. The reason that we've come to the city is, I guess, threefold. One, HUD as a requisite is going to look to see that the city has signed on as a co-applicant. That's a threshold requirement. It's a barrier to entry. HUD will not consider your application if the city is not a co-applicant. Two, there is what we call, and what HUD calls, a critical community improvement criteria. It's one way that the grant is scored. The neighborhood implementing entity is responsible for overseeing that critical community improvement aspect. That essentially has to be the unit of local government. There are some exceptions to that criteria, but they are essentially public-private partnerships that are incorporated for the purpose of implementing those critical community improvements. And then the third reason is, in order to garner the most points under our application criteria, the city could either allocate CDGB dollars or home funds. When looking at that and discussing it with city staff, it became pretty clear that HUD's requirement as far as the amount of dollars was going to essentially decimate any other activities that the city would be able to undertake with those CDBG and home funds. So in working with city staff, we recognized that and we looked for an alternative way to garner those points. And one way is if the city will agree, contingent upon the housing authority, contingent upon our collective, receipt of these implementation dollars, to allocate certain critical community improvement investments within that grant area over the grant term, which is 6 years. And there are a litany of examples of critical community improvements, streetscape improvements, revolving funds for business loans, economic development, curb and gutter, sewer. And so our ask, again, was threefold. Hey, join us as a co-applicant. Be willing to serve if we get this grant, this $30 million infusion of funds into this area, to serve as the neighborhood lead. And then thirdly, commit $4.5 million over a 6-year term to critical community improvements in order to garner us some additional points to increase our likelihood of receiving these grants. So I don't know if that's clarified things or made it more confusing, but I'm certainly happy to respond to any questions. And I apologize for myself. I was out of town in court yesterday and was unavailable. Of course, Mr. Woods had a medical emergency with respect to his wife, and then today our board was meeting at noon, so they were courteous enough to adjourn early, but Mr. Woods and I still found ourselves sprinting up the stairs to try to make it in time. So personally, I apologize, and on behalf of our agency. But thank you for the time, and again, if there are any questions that you all have, I'm happy to do my best to try to respond.
Anybody got any questions, comments, Mr. Montgomery?
Yeah, my questions, part of that has been answered in reference to what it means, more clarity on the neighborhood lead piece in terms of what that means and how that would actually be actualized, and how that conversation will continue moving forward. The other part of it is more specific to services rendered to current residents within the property. I know that there'll be ongoing programmatic things that will be done within the property for as it develops and moves forward. But for current residents who will be displaced, in the letter that we received, it stated that individuals would receive case management services. Now, there's a difference between full case management and case management services, and my question was whether or not individuals would be recipients of full case management, or whether it be case management services, which is a less intensive form of case management.
Okay. So with respect to your first question concerning what exactly does it mean to be the neighborhood lead?
I'm good on that.
You're good on that?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So our only issue right now with respect to clarification is on the degree of case management services. Is that right, Councilmember Montgomery?
The degree of case management.
Okay. And all I have to go on, I will answer that by way of saying HUD requires you to identify a, quote, people lead, okay? United Way has agreed to join in this effort and to serve as the people lead. So United Way's responsibility is going to be to oversee case management. And I'll beg your forgiveness because I didn't understand until 2 seconds ago there was a distinction between case management and case management services. So United Way will be responsible for the implementation of case management to whatever degree. Now, I have tried to contact other implementation awardees to understand the scope of services that they have provided to displaced residents, okay? I will tell you that all I have really been able to uncover is that they have followed the definition that HUD provides, which, for what it's worth, is referred to as case management. And if you will indulge me, I will read the definition, and if it's helpful, great, and if not, I'll do everything I can to get some additional information, if that's fair. Per HUD, and this is coming from the grant application, case management is an individual or family-centered approach to assisting people of all ages with accessing the services they want and need. It includes screening, assessment, risk management, individualized service planning based on resident needs and choices, provision of options and information, linkage, referral to formal and informal services and supports, service coordination at the client level, crisis intervention, follow-up, advocacy, monitoring, evaluation of resident progress, as well as timeliness and effectiveness of service delivery and maintenance of records. Case management contributes to and benefits from well-coordinated services at the community level. The intensity and frequency of case management services should be tailored to the level of an individual's or family's needs. Is that helpful, Councilmember Montgomery?
A simple answer would be conduct.
Okay, okay. And I mean, and if you can help me understand, I will do everything I can. I'll also say this: we have within this grant agreement a lot of discretion to tailor it to what our local assets are. And so if you guys tell me, hey, we really want United Way to be doing X, Y, and Z, we can work with United Way and say, hey, this was a condition of the city's commitment to do these things. We can write this into our partnership agreement with United Way. The only caveat I will add is, of course, it's all subject to funding availability, right? So HUD's giving us $30 million. You'll forgive me if I misspeak, please, but I think that it's capped at 15% that can be utilized for case management. So within that 15% of $30 million, which is what, $9 million, I guess, as long as we can do it with $9 million, we can do it. You know, and at Cleveland Avenue, we're talking about, I think, like 244 residents. So logistically, I don't know how that would work out. What I am representing is that this grant gives us a lot of local flexibility, and we're happy to work with United Way to write in conditions so long as they are implementable with the funding allocation.
And my point on that in terms of some of the conversation before is that I'd rather that be done on the front end rather than attempting to do that on the back end.
Sure.
In the sense of how and what the language is that's sent up to HUD, so that coming around, everybody can have a place in which we're all accountable to. And it may be necessary for us to have some more conversation beyond hear on that, but that helps clear some things, but it doesn't totally get me to where I'm all the way comfortable there.
Please. Thank you.
One of our, Councilman, one of our strategies is that it is our goal, because as a co-applicant, one of the activities, the city is also going to be monitoring the fact that we adhere to the plan and the funds are being spent according to the plan, which means that we would have to send the plan over to the city even before we submit it to get city input and any rewrites that's necessary, which will include any type of, again, third-party contracts with United Way. We discussed internally why we selected United Way is the fact that they are a charitable organization. They fund 60, 70 agencies. They would be in the best, we felt, position to get other partners to come on board through their funding to put a concentration of services and efforts into one area to best help these residents be able to meet the new criteria coming back into this community, and so the community can be sustainable. That was our overall goal and objective. If that needs to be tweaked, we are more than willing to tweak that concept.
And I think United Way will be well and able to help in that. That's my personal comment. I'll keep that one to myself.
Sure.
But I do think that they're very able to assist in that process.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Adams had a comment.
Yes. Again, I guess my first question is, and we can answer that later, when did we first become aware that we were going to be asked to be part of this, Mr. Page?
Councilman Adams, I believe they made a presentation to council in April. I think I have a month, right? Maybe May. I think they made a presentation to council in May where to the finance committee, and at that point it was the direction of the finance committee that we could bring back the item for consideration, which we did yesterday. So based on the timeline, they got approval in late April. We came to finance committee initially in May with a memo and discussion and a brief presentation then, and came back yesterday for an action item. So it's been 6 weeks.
Okay. And going forward, Mr. Page, Mr. Garrity, when we have things of this caliber or magnitude coming to the council, I think because we see so much material and we appreciate everything staff does, but we don't remember everything. And we sure would like it if you gave us a nudge. I mean, you give me a nudge on everything else I don't want to hear about, but on things like this, I just need to know. I need a heads up before yesterday. I needed to know if this was May. I needed to see some materials coming on Thursdays, just a, heads up, FYI, this is what this is about again. This is what we're asking you. It could just be a paragraph. But we need that as we move forward, because as you saw how many pieces of paper got dropped on us when we came in the door just now. The $4.5 million request with the city, you're saying that will be used to complete community improvements?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
And those would be streets, gutters, sidewalk. Do you think, do you really think that's going to be enough? Is it going to be, I'm not saying add any more dollars to it, but I'm saying, do you really think $4.5 million is going to take care of that neighborhood and the community needs? So you need to, I think, let the public know that we're just a partner. We're not going to fund the whole community improvements to that section there. Am I pretty much right about that, Mr. Page or Mr. Turner or Mr. Rao? Somebody answer.
That's correct, Councilman Adams. We're just one partner in the overall project. While the grant is $30 million, they're anticipating the overall investment to be close to $100 million. So that includes not only the grant, but private and local funds as well.
Okay. I need to still see as we move forward. I need to see some created details of a plan versus what I have in front of me now. I think the council would like to see that. That's why we all have this look on our faces up here, because we can say we support it, and we know that we have to sign off on what we see. But my advice to you and your organization is that you get us something that we can glean as we move forward in this process. Also, the neighborhood lead piece and the part of inclusiveness. I commend the United Way for everything that they do, but I also know that we have organizations that really need to be a part of this, Mr. Woods, besides the United Way. I know the United Way has played a very critical piece in our communities forever, but times have changed, and we have the organizations, and I am not ashamed to say it because everybody knows I've said it over and over. We have nonprofits that have benefited from all the philanthropic contributions of this community and others, and I don't see the results that I think by now Winston should have seen versus where we are now with poverty and unemployment and our education and everything else. So part of my support as we move forward in this is that we engage other organizations who are really, and I know they have a connection to the United Way, but I think these organizations, you need to have more than the United Way as the head person. There needs to be some people that look like the people that's from the neighborhood, and they need to be able to tell us what they really feel about all of this. And we need some of those organizations who work day to day with no money in trying to make things happen, and they do a somewhat better job than the bigger organizations in how they make this work. Again, I'm just looking forward to what we see going forward so far as the plan and our involvement in it as we go forward.
Thank you. Mr. McIntosh?
What's your anticipated timeline on this? So when would you anticipate getting grant money? When would you anticipate getting site control? Therefore, when would you anticipate City of Winston-Salem having to cut checks?
So, excuse me, the grant period starts January 1, 2017, and it runs through, it's like September 2023. So it's more or less six and a half years. With respect to the site control question, our phasing, the initial phases are going to be in Cleveland Avenue Homes, right, which we own and control. So that's going to be the center of the redevelopment activities. We already have site control. We would obviously need to do, to the council's concern today, some case management services and some relocation meetings in order to get those folks relocated before we could actually start doing any demo or any vertical or development or pre-development for that matter. So with respect to the ultimate issue concerning the city's contribution of funds, the requirement with the $4.5 million is simply that it be spent sometime during that 6-year period. And so that would be up to the city's discretion as to whether they start doing street improvements, day one, January 1, 2017, that would count towards that requirement, or maybe there's a bigger project, some loan to a small business. I don't know what that looks like. I'm sure the folks at this table are much more well-positioned than am I to make those determinations, but I think my point to emphasize would be that it would be the folks around this table making that determination and not us. We hope, obviously, that would be done as a team effort, but that's just a commitment for you guys to do whatever you see fit so long as it's in this grant area and it's during that 6-year period.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Montgomery?
Yeah, just a comment, less of a comment than question. That is just a saying thank you to Mr. Woods and to the rest of his team and to the Hall's board for the diligence in continuing to push forward with the plan. I know that sometimes when you create an aspirational vision for something and pushing towards that can get tiresome in terms of being able to actually get it to fulfillment. And I think that because of that, we're at the place now and have the opportunity to see the impact here and hopefully and prayerfully is one that the entire community can be proud of and see great impacts. And as you know, I've been a great supporter of the Housing Authority and the work that's being done there. It's just always making sure when we frame what we're looking at that some of these pieces are important in terms of the overall picture. So don't want you to take my questions as not being supportive, but just in terms of trying to get some clarity on a couple of pieces. And then one additional comment on it is just in the big scope of things when we look at it, it'd be interesting, and I'm not sure if there's going to be some data points which data is going to be collected on as people are transitioning and moving within the community, of how many of the people who are in the community today actually benefit from the improvements that happen in the neighborhood. I know that there are conversations around education components and schools and that kind of stuff, and when we look at it, and I know, if a person gets a voucher and they move into another neighborhood and they desire not to come back to the new neighborhood, just being able to look at the metrics and numbers to see, did the quality of life for those individuals in the neighborhood who are there today, how did that improve as compared to the new community that's mixed and made of former residents and new residents in the community, and how that looks and what that looks like?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think that's it. Just for y'all's information, this was moved and will be on the agenda Monday night. Secondly, we did have a brief discussion on the Burke Village issue. What we typically do here is the staff presents it 1 month and then the next month, and by the way, we're not meeting in July, so it will be August, that they'll actually have a resolution concerning the purchase of the Burke Village. And I will say the general comments there were, as we would expect, when the actual resolution gets to it, they'll have maps and more detail in this, that, and the other. Okay? Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, Lee, I'd interrupted you. We will get back. You had gone over briefly the change in the minimum hourly rate from 10.10. Actually, it's 10.10 now. It's in the budget at 10.40 up to 11, and the additional police recruitment efforts.
That's correct.
Pick it up.
I'll pick it up from there. The third thing on the list, we heard from several concerns related to the increased violence that unfortunately our city and many other cities are experiencing. And one suggestion would be to allocate $50,000 from contingency for additional grants, reentry grants to SOAR programs. They would have to come back through council to award them, so all the budget would do is put the money aside for that. They would have to follow all of our requirements for grantee agencies. Related to that, you can jump down. Another request was to consider expanding our summer youth employment program. We have a 2-year contract with the Urban League. This is year 2 of that contract. It's currently $125,000, and the suggestion would be to expand that by $50,000 using some fund balance from Housing Finance Assistance Fund so that more young people could be employed this summer. And then the other expense change was a suggestion to consider changing the expense allowance for the mayor and city council. The current expense allowance has not been changed since 1990, so it's been a few years with inflation. This would increase it by $200 per month. Under state law, you can't change the expense allowance. It can't take effect until after an election. So if council voted to do that, it wouldn't take effect till January 1st of 2017.
Ms. Adams, did you have a comment or question?
Yes, about the successful outcomes after release. Can we, or your staff, think about going forward again? And maybe Councilmember Taylor's already asked for this. If we're talking about successful outcomes, we need to see some type of report. Every quarter, 6 months, something that you tell me you took in X amount of clients. This is what you did with these clients. This is where they are now to keep it moving forward. I mean, and if I had my way, I'd do that with every community organization that we have. I know we got a board, a commission that looks over it, but we don't, and it's because it's just so much, we don't follow up to see if we're getting the outcomes that we want for the taxpayers' money. So I'm now focused on 2. I just got my 2, which is the veterans and successful outcomes. Can we do that, please?
We can do that. We actually do that. Look at Ms. Martin from the budget office. We actually get reports from every agency, but we can provide. I don't want to overload you with the giant report.
No, I don't want that. I'd like to see it in committee, just like we hear presentations from everybody else on what they're doing. I'd like to see that same method used for those 2 groups, and we don't have to see them all at one time. We can stagger it. We can do 2 a month. And
it fits with the change in the budget where we're focusing on outcomes. So if we're doing this for a safe and secure community and economic development and vitality, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, the mayor had a comment.
Just to follow up on that, as the 50,000, I think that's a great idea. As we're vetting the applications, I would hope that we would try to tie in the analysis of the request to the data that's coming from Chief Roundtree and his staff to say here, and I know it's a very complex issue in terms of the causes of the violence, but to make sure there is a cause and effect there.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And I had a comment on the summer youth employment. I would like some information on maybe what we spend per youth employed.
Okay.
And what are they doing? Just a little more information.
Yeah,
And again, I know you got a big thick book. Don't need all that.
no.
Okay, Mr. McIntosh.
I do just want to go on record about the expense allowance. I'm not in favor of that. $200 a month. I don't think anybody on this council does this for the pay, so it doesn't, I think, significantly increase our living standards, but that's just one thing I'm not in favor of.
Thank you, sir. Now, Lee, you're going to tell us how you're going to pay for it.
Absolutely. First on the list is eliminating the proposal for the 4th Police District, the Central District. Talking to Chief Roundtree, I think he believes we can muddle by with what we have right now with 3 districts and look at maybe some changes in the future. It is really critical that we address recruitment. We don't have enough officers. Doesn't matter how many districts we have. The next is eliminate 3 positions we recommended adding for the bond projects related to the spray parks, a pool coordinator and 2 pool crew specialists. They will come back to you next year. The reason we can delay it a year is because of the time it's taking to build the spray parks, but it will come back to you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The elimination of the 4th district is 5 positions. Is that the those top 2 things on page, the attachment A or whatever it is?
You're in
City
the book.
managers measures, I'm in the book, I'm in the
She's
actual book.
Roman numeral page 12.
12. Yeah, 12. It has your full-time position additions included in the proposed FY 16-17. These right here?
Yes.
Are those the police captain and the public safety?
Yes, they're the 5 for the 4th district.
Okay, okay. Got it.
Third on the list is we had recommended adding 4 positions for crime
Can
analysis.
I go back to the pool? When are the spray parks opening?
I have mine already.
Several of them are already under construction. Several more are in the process of. Actually, there were 2 on the finance committee agenda yesterday.
Contracts to build.
Yeah, but none of them will be open until next summer at the earliest, by the time we get built. So
There'll be very little in the 2016-17
Right.
budget, which ends June 30th next year, and the summer starts June 1st.
Right.
we are required by the state to monitor every day when they're open the quality of the water. So that's the main reason we need the additional people.
Okay.
The next one on the list, we did ask for 4 new positions in police fire related to both crime analysis and technology. We think we can temporarily delay one of those IT positions. In the meantime, we're going to undergo a study of looking at the police department and our main information services division over here to see if there are some possibilities for some consolidation, synergies in certain areas that might be able to save that position, at least temporarily. 4th, we had proposed another human resource analyst for training. We only have 1, which is much less than any other city. But we thought as we could delay that or defer that, there's still money in the budget for a considerable amount of increase in our contract training with Forsyth Tech. That has been very successful. We bring in different trainers who are experts at one thing and pay them to do that. Very, very reasonable price. And then for some of the other maintenance positions that are related to bond projects, based on the timing, Mr. Rao indicates that we still need them, but they won't open until the end of the calendar year, so we could save 6 months on those.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What's the facility maintenance position? Where is that at? So far as this list, yeah, is concerned.
Mr. Rao, help me out, because that's all of them, the equipment maintenance technician, electrician, the trades helper, and the maintenance workers? No, not the maintenance workers, just
Those three positions.
those three positions.
Which ones?
The equipment maintenance technician, the electrician, and the trades helper. They're all related to the new buildings that are coming online, police districts.
Okay. You're taking all three of those to a half year versus a full?
Yes. And then in addition, we are suggesting that we use most of the contingency that we had in the budget. I believe we had $90,000 budgeted, and we're suggesting we reduce that by, what is that, 82,000?
60,000.
60,000. And that's the summary. We also did include a table about the total cash compensation for elected officials.
Yeah.
That's at your place. That was put together by the city of Greensboro.
Any other questions, comments on Mr.? I did get an email from Mr. Taylor, and I guess you all did, from the public safety meeting yesterday. Are there any members of the public safety committee here who would like to comment? Because they were looking at their portion of the budget.
As far as I'm concerned, it went very smoothly.
We didn't have any
Accepted.
adjustments that we thought needed to be made.
Okay, thank you. Because I know he did mention in his email that he didn't think he was going to make it here today. Lee, where is the, and maybe I don't know if you got the piece of paper here, maybe it's, where we listed the number of officers per capita?
As in,
Somewhere.
I know it was yesterday. Do I have it?
and then the June 13th answers to questions.
I got the June 14th.
Or June 14th.
Would it be in there too?
Help me out, Mr. Rao.
Public
I
safety.
didn't see it in here.
The June 14th is not a cumulative one because we pulled that together
Okay,
last
I
night.
don't know if I got,
Yesterday's packet on page 7.
can you just read, can you put them on the machine over there?
You know, saw it.
Hang on a minute. Right, let me do some quick math here. I found this a puzzling chart. And let me just, I would expect us to be similar to the folks similar to us. And by the way, this is per capita, which they, and we're right on with Greensboro. We have the same number of officers per capita. But I was quite surprised, and I'm picking Durham, because Durham is closer to our size than Greensboro. Matter of fact, Durham's 5,000 more people than we are, and I think it's a very similar city. They have 19% fewer officers. Divide 23.6 by 19.9 is roughly 19% less, which is fairly significant. And I'm not suggesting we do it now, but I'd be curious as to how these other folks, and they've got more substations than we do, or whatever you call those things. Yeah, go ahead.
That's one measure that you asked for. If you look on page 79 of the budget, there are two other measures of that we use for law enforcement. One is part one crime.
Wait, let me get to 79.
Right.
Yes, sir.
One is part one crimes per thousand population.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, based on our crime rate, we're above the average, as well as the other one, which I don't think we have on this page, but we do look at the number of calls, and that measure also shows us above the average. If I can let Ben or Chief Brown.
But I do know on that first chart, and this has been going on for a long time, we count crimes differently, because if you go into the store and rob it and shoot the guy, we count that as 2, and Greensboro counts it as 1.
That's the difference between what's called incident-based reporting and
Yeah.
uniform.
Yeah, I wrote on here, question mark, fair comparison.
The other thing, we have a standard of call response, which is different, and Chief can comment on it, but there are many of our calls that we respond to with officers that cities like Charlotte do not. They do it on the phone. It's always been the position of this council that
Yeah,
They
okay.
did not want to go to that level of service.
I'm wondering if, and again, Greensboro's right on, which I'd expect, but I was wondering if some of these other cities use non-sworn folks more than we do.
Well, one point that Chief Roundtree did make to me just a second ago, Durham does not have school resource officers,
Okay,
and we do.
okay.
We also may have more grant-funded positions right now than Durham, so that could also be driving a bit of why our number per 10,000 is a bit higher.
Okay, does the school system reimburse us for those officers?
They do,
Okay,
yes, sir.
so that really doesn't have a budget impact, okay. Appreciate it, yes.
But it's
Mr.
reflected.
Montgomery?
What's that number? What's the number of resource officers?
Good evening. We service 20 schools, 8 high schools and 12 middle schools. The number is going to be around 22 police officers that serve as school resource officers. And as you're aware, the council did approve, we do have 10 grant-funded positions in that 570 also.
Okay, thank you. All righty, any other questions or comments? The reason I wanted to be sure that the public safety got their chance to speak, because they did meet yesterday and I was not in attendance. But I did get an email. Okay, we have heard from, and basically, if we were to take this book here and put this with it, Lee, that's kind of what you're proposing now.
That's correct.
That's correct, okay. Do we have any questions or comments on that? So we've still got the 2-cent tax increase, and if I'm counting right, which 30 positions net versus 40.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or comments? I'm looking to by the way, Miss Burke is not here. Her book is here. Is she in the?
She, her air conditioning has failed, so she needed to meet the repairman today.
That is definitely an emergency this week. If there are no more questions, I'm looking for one of my 2 council members. By the way, there's only 3 here from the committee here today to make a motion.
I move that we accept the recommended budget and property tax rate. Can I do that?
Is that the motion I need, or do I need a motion?
With the amendment.
With the amendment changes
Okay.
by the city
So
manager.
you're making a motion to accept the budget as amended on this sheet of paper?
Correct, yes.
Is there, I'm looking, is that a proper motion? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I will oppose it. That's 2-1. Do we need any other motions? I know we make about 20 motions Monday night, but do we need any other?
Chairman Clark, in your agenda package, and I think I handed it out as a separate, there is a whole list of the budget-related items that would be considered on the 20th.
Wait a minute.
Where is it?
I got it right here. Okay. Do we need to make a motion on all these here?
So I think it would be good to do that, so we can walk through each one individually.
So do I need an ordinance amending Chapter 10 of the City Code relating to building regulations?
Yes, so that relates to, there are 2 fee changes in the proposed budget. One is an after-hours inspection fee change. That right now we provide an after-hours inspection for non-emergency purposes free of charge. And what we're proposing is that we would
Okay.
actually...
Let me go up. I'm just going to start at the top. Do I need a motion to set the public hearing for Monday night? That's set, so I don't have to worry about public hearing. So the revenue, do I have a motion for the ordinance amended Chapter 10 of the Winston-Salem City Code relating to building inspection? Yes, sir.
In reference to the actual items that are listed here, the items that are in relation to Bethesda Center being extracted from the budget in a manner in which that would allow for me not to vote on those items?
That's correct. There are 2 project budget ordinances. There will be the one that would appropriate the federal housing funds and the housing finance assistance funds. That will be a separate project budget ordinance from the others. So
You got 2.
So when we get to them, you will cue me in and he can excuse himself. Okay.
Right.
I move that we accept.
Wait. Have we done the revenue?
That's the one I'm getting at.
Okay, excuse me. Go right ahead.
I
You're ahead of me.
I move that we accept the ordinance amending Chapter 10 of the Winston-Salem City Code relating to building regulations.
Second.
Okay.
Do we?
comment.
Go ahead. I just asked a question on the revenue one. So okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise, that is approved. We'll now go to the adoption of budget, tax levy, and capital plan. We have the annual appropriation and tax levy ordinance for the city of Winston-Salem, North Carolina for the fiscal year 2016-17.
I move for approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I will oppose that one, so that's 2-1. Next one, on the project budget ordinance for the city of Winston-Salem, North Carolina for the fiscal year 2016-17. Is that the capital budget?
That's basically the capital funds, yes, sir.
Okay, do we have a motion on that?
I move for approval.
Second.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed likewise, that one is approved. The next one is the project budget ordinance for the city of Winston-Salem, North Carolina for the fiscal year 2016-17, federal housing funds, housing financial assistance. This is what Mr.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we need a motion to excuse him from voting?
I move that Councilman Montgomery is recused from voting on the project budget.
I will second that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That is approved. So we have now approved
You approve me.
you
Yeah.
being excused. Now do I have a motion to approve the project budget?
I move that we approve the project budget ordinance for the city of Winston-Salem for the fiscal year.
I'll second that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed likewise. So that one is passed. Mr. Bessie, we're on this sheet of paper in front of you going through all these little motions we have to make. Resolution approving the capital plan for the fiscal year 2016-17 through 21-22 as a financial planning tool.
I move that we approve the resolution.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed likewise. That one is approved. We will now go down to, I'm going to other budget-related items, and there are 4 here. Resolution amending the personnel resolution of the city of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, making changes to the pay plan and other policies and supporting a 3-year market study for all city position classifications.
I move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That one is approved. The next one is a resolution authorizing amendment to the City County Cooperative Government Services Funding Agreement between the City of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County for a consolidated City County Forensic Services Unit.
I move for approval.
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That one is approved. We will now go to the next one, resolution authorizing an interlocal agreement between the City of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County grant funds to support the District Attorney's Domestic Violence Unit.
I move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That is approved. And a resolution approving a cost of living adjustment for the City of Winston-Salem Police Retirement System for fiscal year 2016-17.
Move for approval.
Second.
I would like a comment. I don't remember discussing that much. What are we doing here?
Yes, sir.
Lisa, whoever. We discuss the budget, and then we get these resolutions that seem to have no
So every
bearing.
year, we look at a cost of living increase for the Winston-Salem Police Officers Retirement Commission, and the city code says we'll do that in the same manner as the state does. The state will be giving a 0.105% cost of living to the local government employees. We had our actuary look at it, and the Winston-Salem Police Officer Retirement Commission can't afford that, so we're recommending the same.
Okay, thank you very much. Any
Okay.
questions to Ms. Saunders?
Just on that, I would
Well-
ask at some point in time that we look at, I know you sit on that?
I sit on that board.
On that board, but just to look at our ability on years in which we don't, looking at our policy in reference to that, what that really means and the solvency of it and what positions are we in and can we do differently at different times?
Mhm. We can do that.
Okay.
Because I've talked to some state retirees and that is a drop in the bucket in terms of the cost of living for this year. So,
Yeah. I will say, as a member of that committee, we do look, and we have an outside firm that does the actuarial analysis each year, and we calculate up. And by the way, the police are the only folks that have their separate retirement. Then everyone else is on the state plan. And as of the last actuarial report, which we got fairly recently, what percent are we?
We're 87% funded.
87% funded.
Mhm.
Which is not bad.
Which is
Actually,
very
very
good.
good. It's very good. That's probably a
is.
B+ in the retirement world.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion and a second on this. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. That is approved. Mr. Mayor, you have your hand up?
Nope.
Okay.
Keep on trucking.
All righty. I think we're done. Mr. Bessie, you came in late. Did you have anything you wanted to comment on? Because we're getting ready to adjourn.
No, I was here primarily to see if there were any additional changes being proposed to the staff positions, and my understanding is that's not the case.
If you look at this sheet of paper,
Beyond this.
this was adopted in cooperation with this book,
Right.
and that's what we did. Okay, hearing no other comments, the meeting will stand adjourned. I will remind everybody at